the National Endowment for the Humanities, bringing you the stories that define us.
Okay, my name is Edna Lopez. My background name is Edna Grijalva from living here in San Elizario. And I was born in 1945. I was actually born here in San Elizario. 4 of my generations have been raised here. And so we moved to Fabens. That's where my dad had the farming at that point. And so we would come for all the religious, baptism, everything else here in San Elizario, because all our relatives were here in San Elizario. I used to call her Santitos. That was my grandfather's grandmother. And she was pretty old when she died. So, and I never forget it, because when she died, they had the funeral service all overnight. That was very standard at that time. And I gotta remember, it was Santitos. I used to call her Santitos because I used to come with her to the church when she donated Our Lady of Guadalupe to this church in San Eli. Yeah. Yes, some of the relatives from my grandfather, which was Grijalvas, they were in Aguascalientes, most of them. And they would go there often. Mostly because the family was large. My grandmother and grandfather had 11 kids, So we would have actually like a traditional, almost every Sunday we would go visit my grandmother. And my other grandma too, that she's Gandara. That was her name, but she was, her last name was Beru, which was French. But that was on my grandmother's side. The whole family was more concentrated here in San Elizario. And to this day, I have a lot of cousins that live between Clint and Fabens. The one thing that everybody says, this is a funny thing, for Thanksgiving, my grandmother used to make, dressing, but it has peanut butter. And it's a very unusual one. And for the holidays, especially for Thanksgiving, we would all get together at the big house. I call it the big house. Now it's not a big house. But my grandfather we would have a big long table, and all the adults would get to sit there, and they would put another table next to with the children that were under a certain age. Because we were the oldest of the Grijalvas. Yeah. And traditionally, just some of the food that we made, I think some people have it or not, but like that dressing that I make, not everybody says. They said, why would you put peanut butter and you put cornmeal, not breading? You didn't. And there was a traditional one that we did, yes. And my grandmother used to make fresh baked bread every day. The yeast bread. Yeah. She would make it every day. It was a haunted thing. Not really. You know what? I used to hear, but I didn't really pay attention. But I'm gonna check with my aunt who's here, and I'll ask her. Maybe she has a better memory than I do. Yeah. I was just having too much fun with all my aunts, my 3 aunts, that I used to like to spend part of the summer with them, because they're the ones that taught me how, you can't dress like that. I used to come and stay, and my grandmother would always scold them. You have to take care of her. I was the oldest of the grandchildren for my dad and my mom. And so there were 3 women. There were my aunts. They were all the youngest of 12 people. You know what I'm saying? So I'd come and spend, and they would even dress me up to go to dances, because at that time you used to go to dances. Yeah. You didn't. And so they would dress me up and said, don't talk to anybody, and don't you dare tell them that you're only 12. Well, the improvements that I see, even the genealogy. I mean, I was here when they had that as a big fun. I mean, they used to have dances and all kinds of productions there. But it's because I guess Sanelli has also been over, how can I say it? The growth of Sanelli has grown with a lot of immigrants too, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of the houses have been picked up by other people, you know what I'm saying? But what I like about San Elizario, they're trying to develop like even this area. I mean, if you read the history, it's very mean. Like, I'm very impressed that you're telling me that they're going to bring this up to par, and I want to know who's going to pay for that. You know,
Yeah.
that's a
very
big
important.
question.
Yeah.
Yes, very important. But this city, San Elizario, was very, very supportive of people. Did you go to the church and see all the names of the people that went to war? My dad's brother died at the war, and we even went to see his gravesite in Manal, Spain. Not in Spain, it's right there on the border of France, because my grandmother was sent a letter that her son had died. Do you want us to transport the body or to leave him there? And she said, no, don't bring him, just leave him there. We went to see his gravesite from 1945. Well, I usually always come visit because most of our people that are older that have died, they're at Carmel Cemetery. And I always go there. And then I go like with my cousin to San Elizario, because I'll never forget it when my dad said, well, they have a plaque, you know, a place that they're going to have for the Grijalvas there. And they said, who wants to be buried in that dumpy San Elizario cemetery?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But traditionally, most of the people now have died, and they're buried in some, you know, down there. Where did I tell you? Mount Carmel. You know, that's where the big cemetery is. Well, the one that I always have is curious about it on my grandfather's side, that my dad would tell me stories that they would, but this is people that are not doing good things. They were transporting liquor. But the thing is that they bought land in Clint and different places, you know what I'm saying? Oh, before they, yes, I always felt like there's some Grijalvas that have left to California, and I've always wanted to know, well, what happened? You know, how come they didn't stay in touch? You know what I'm saying? That I wanted to also, I was very curious about their history. I mean, did they get married? Did they have kids? Even though they were also Grijalva from there. Yeah. And my grandfather's sister, her name was Anita, like his wife. She had 50 rental houses in California. She was a sharp lady, I'm telling you. She's the one that I told you that she'd invite you to come to breakfast, but not yet. She had to put her pearls, her heels, her hair. Yes. And I remember that. Now that was the one that I always wanted to find out. But that was a little further from the background. But I always said, how did she manage to have 50 rental houses in Lincoln Heights? You know where Lincoln Heights is?
Yeah.
You've been to Lincoln Heights.
Yes.
And some of my other relatives are there. They live there. They live in different places of Southern California. I mean, yeah, right there. Is to do value and appreciate and find out about your roots. Who were you connected? Like right now, I'm really curious about that. My grandmother, who was a widow, and her husband's name was Beru, and that's the one that I really want to find out, because I just found out last night from Lillian's brother that a friend that he knows, his name is Beru, and he knew some of the relatives that I knew that were Beru. And I said, so who were they? You know, when
How
I
are you
think,
connected
how are we connected, and how did the others even died or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of history back there that doesn't tell you the whole picture. Education and advancement. See, because can you imagine if I had just been, what is it, a daughter of my grandfather, but they had started building big acres of land, and what made me more enthusiastic, which we all lack in our education, is that we have to advance. It doesn't matter that you say, well, I really don't want to go to college, but it's carrying the next history to a different level of awareness of where did we come from and how, and what did we make the difference in people's lives, especially nowadays that you're exposed to the COVID and all that. How do you handle that? I mean, that in itself is a time frame in life that has almost stopped. You know that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's my father wanted to be in the service with his brother. He's the one that his name was Tony, and so that's who I saw his gravesite, and what that made a really big impact. How at that time they were either gonna, what he said, go ahead and go into the service, or they were gonna be picked up to be. And my father didn't pass it because he had a heart ailment or high blood pressure, and so his brother went, and he was really, I mean, I didn't know him then because I had just been I was a little girl, but the stories that I even have pictures of, how he communicated with, and that their contribution, and you see this in San Eli, for this town at that time and how small it was, the commitment and the loyalty to the United States of America, that you were devoted to that. I mean, I've always tried to do that to my sons, but they didn't want to go. But that's a different serial. But I'm saying, even the way some people that are ex-military, their passion and their commitment to the world, and how they could make themselves in a little town like San Elizario, that they made a difference. That's the way I always heard it, because I know a couple of my uncles went to the service, and so they were always very passionate about being able to contribute to the war, even though this was a little town. Think about it. I mean, this was supposed to be El Paso, you know that. And because of people like my dad used to get mad, is those people that didn't want the chickens to be ran down by the railroad. Did you hear that story too?
I didn't know.
Yes, my dad would get so upset because he used to run the gas station in the middle of town, Grijalva, and he said, "Esa gente tonta," They moved El Paso to El Paso when we were supposed to be the main center of the Bryce County, right? And because people said they didn't want the railroad to come through here, and I think he was joking, but sometimes I believed him. He said because they didn't want their chickens to be run down by the railroad tracks.